Emil Guillermo. Emil Amok to you. This is Emil Amok's Takeout. My takes on all things considerable. It's just me having fun. I mean, this is what a talk show host does when a talk show host is observing and needing a place to talk. Essentially, this is the new underground, right? The new underground radio. It isn't really radio, but what the heck? I mean, it's similar, right? We're talking about things different from the mainstream. Well, we have different takes in the mainstream. I'm, like I said, just having fun. Maybe this isn't that hard to say. Maybe I'm having more fun than Ketanji Brown Jackson. If you heard show 269 yesterday, I thought the most telling things about the opening day were, of course, her statement, but mostly the people who spoke in support of her. I mean, it's always nice when you hear blowhard senators not being able to be as blowhardy as they would like because they're trying to be nice. That was the first day. But it was nice to hear from her roommates. I check out show 269. You'll see what I mean. Because today it was kind of a light smear. The Republicans really couldn't go at her really substantively. And when they did, there's enough time to come back and say, well, to clarify, here is what was actually said or written by Judge Jackson. And it kind of wipes out the claim of Republicans that either she's for critical race theory or that she called George Bush a war criminal. I mean, they're really grasping the GOP. And the Democrats, to their credit, are just allowing her to speak and talk about relevant things. So I just had to take a break. I was watching the hearings. Thank goodness I'm not a lawyer. I mean, the Republicans are doing what they're doing because they think that this is what's going to be relevant to people out there who are non-lawyers and who, want to participate. But it's kind of a turnoff, especially when the questions like whether or not Judge Jackson allies herself with critical race theory. It's totally irrelevant, as she points out, to her duties as a judge. In fact, there is no critical race theory. I mean, she's not a critical race theory adherent of, 1619, the revisionist history that was brought up in the proceedings today is, oh, see, you're part of this whole leftist perspective, this Marxist leftist perspective of critical race theory. Ted Cruz said that. Said, when we were Harvard Law School students, we were just a year apart, but we didn't know each other. But certainly you were part of, and all the while, they're very cordial. And everything is couched in with respect, and then you go after the guy. Or respectfully, and then you diss your assailant, your intellectual combatant. It's debate, right? And debate is about clash. And that's what Ted Cruz does well, but he's up against a champion, Ketanji Brown Jackson. So I kind of enjoyed watching it to a point, but this is going to go on for about 8 hours today. I mean, I think I woke up at about 5:30 or 6, and they're going at it. It's going to go on until, I believe, 6 o'clock Pacific. So this is a long slog. Is that it? Some breaks in there. And I just had to take a break and to come talk to you, to share with you what I thought was important. Yeah, so I want to talk about that. I'm also going to talk about the Franklin Tao case. If you go to my ALDIF column at the Asian American Legal Defense and Education Fund, I talk about the Tao case, and I talk about how it could signal a new wave of anti-Asian hate, anti-Asianness, because if they're trying to paint Asian Americans, specifically Chinese academics, as spies, what is that going to mean to, say, the fallout to the Asian American community? Anyway, that's what that trial is about. And here's the thing. The Franklin Tao case, the Justice Department couldn't connect him with spying, couldn't connect him with espionage. So they said, what the heck? We're going to get you on something. We're going to stop this quote unquote free flow of information from America to China. We're going to get you with these other felonies, which means people who were, say, they were on social media, they read my column, they said, what's the big deal? He did these crimes, right? Just go after him for these crimes. What's the big deal is the crimes that he is alleged to have committed are what used to be procedural, bureaucratic sorts of crimes, and are weak substitutes for the espionage that couldn't be proved against Franklin Tao. And so his defense attorneys are saying, wait a minute, you're going to send this guy to prison for essentially moonlighting? So this is how that trial is shaping up. The government saying, you may not be a spy, but you're living this double life. You're going back to China. You're recruiting students. You're bringing them back. You were spying. We can't use the term spying. But did you disclose this relationship you had over there in China? That may be something that is going to trip up Tao, but is it as severe as espionage? So, and then his defense, as I said, look, the guy's moonlighting. Are you going to penalize a guy who takes the effort to build up the program at the University of Kansas because he can't find graduate students here, Americans, who want to do scholarly research, but instead want to go into the private sector? So he goes to China and gets students. So that's that case. It's day 2 of that case. And sort of interesting. It's going to take 3 weeks. It's going to build up slowly. But if that case explodes, or if there's fallout, it could mean the continuation of that Trump era China initiative, where the Justice Department goes after Asian American, Asian green card holder, green card residents who are studying here. And already there is a fear that, I mean, it's already happening because, during the Trump administration, it was widespread. The program went away, but the FBI is trying to build a case that there are 2,000 of these instances that they're following throughout the country, and that they're Christopher Wray. The FBI said there's a new case every 12 hours. They are fearful of it. And as I said in my column, it may be what they're fearful of is not Asian scholars coming here and stealing what are open, this is, publicly accessible information. We're not talking about top secret information. We're talking about basic science. And what America really fears is that it's slipping in the science and technological fields because it can't interest American grown students, American grown scientists to take what's happening here seriously. They'd rather go off into the private sector. So that's kind of what's at stake there. All right, so we talked about Frank Liddell. That's going to be a slow churn, but we're into day 2 of that story. The big story is Ketanji Brown Jackson. And I just want to say I'm glad I'm not a lawyer because every time I sort of force myself to cover these things, I find myself it's like going to, like when I covered the OJ trial years ago, that was like going to OJ law school. Oh, you know all about murders. You know the difference between civil and criminal. You know the difference. Yeah. I mean, you watch that much, trial testimony. So every trial that comes up almost is like law school for journalists. In fact, they do have a program to help journalists understand what's going on. Here's something that comes up. If you watch any of the testimony, I'm going to play the clip. The best clip and the most relevant thing is what or how does Judge Ketanji Brown Jackson come to a conclusion? How does she come to her decision? And I'll get to that because that's all you need, right? Everything else is just the Republicans throwing stuff up against the wall and seeing what sticks. Pornography. I mean, I can't believe this. They're trying to paint Judge Jackson. It's too early to call her KBJ, I think. I mean, I have, but I want to be respectful. Judge Jackson. It's too early to call her that. But if you saw yesterday and you heard what I had on this show, talking about talked about her family, her mother and father, her kids. It's a stretch to try to link her as being soft on crime, specifically soft on pornography. That's what Ted Cruz tried to do today. And he had a big placard showing, look, these guys wanted, the federal guidelines said, 20 years and you gave them so much less. You gave me 88% less. Here you were like 14% less, 16% less. I mean, it's on the face of it, it sounds, and this is like a debater tactic. It sounds like, oh, maybe he's scoring some points. Maybe he's making sense until you hear the rebuttal that, the guidelines are just guidelines. And some people nationwide across all the courts in the land feel that the guidelines on pornography are too strict. And so Judge Jackson relies on her own sense of a methodology, which makes her impartial, uses the guidelines. And as Chris Coons, Democratic senator, allowed her to say, and as he found, there were instances where she was right there with the standards, because you have to consider each and every individual case. In some cases, you're going to get the most restrictive. In some cases, you're going to consider other factors. You can't just go and say, oh, look at what you did. You're soft on pornography. No, she's not soft on pornography. It's misleading. In fact, nationwide, most judges feel that the national standards are just wrong. At best, what Ted Cruz was trying to do, and some other senators, the Republican senators, are trying to paint Judge Jackson as soft on crime, misleading. misleading at best. The other thing that came up, and once again, Coons, this is one of the things about coming later. You can come up and clarify some of the statements that were made earlier. But this idea that somehow Ketanji Jackson was some left-wing adherent, some kind of, activist judge on the left. Nothing from what I heard. Here's the thing. There are things in Judge Jackson's record that makes her actually much more conservative sounding than you think. And Coons brought up two things that I think make the point. There was the idea of Hillary Clinton's emails. The RNC sued, and they wanted access to Hillary Clinton's emails. Judge Jackson went through them, and she said, yeah, the USAID has to give up its emails to the RNC. And this was just a few weeks before the Republican National Convention. And Coons makes the point that, well, if that's the case, can anyone really say that you are biased toward any one party or ideology? It sounds like in this case, you sided with the RNC, the Republican National Committee. And isn't it funny? The Republican National Committee is out there saying anti-Judge Jackson stuff because they don't want her. When in fact, they were beneficiaries of a fair and even-handed ruling on Hillary Clinton's emails. That was one instance that Coons mentions. The other one was just how Judge Jackson, on the issue of building a wall, sided with the Trump administration. And what did that mean? It just means that she took her methodology. She looked and was trying to be fair and faithful to the Constitution, to the rule of law. She looked at things, looked at the record, looked at precedent, looked at the facts, made her judgment, sided with Trump on building a wall. Is she some kind of ardent, radical leftist? I don't think so. I think you're going to see that she's fair. She's faithful to the Constitution and the rule of law. She's incredibly smart. And as I'll show you in a sec, she's way smarter and more qualified for this job than the people holding this job now. She certainly knows a lot more about the law than the senators who are asking her questions. Among the most bizarre was maybe Lindsey Graham, who took the tack of, well, we're not going to make this a circus like people made the circus of Judge Bork or made the circus of Amy Coney Barrett. And then he goes ahead and makes a circus out of things. Lindsey Graham. Yeah, I just think that he was the first one to bring up the porn thing. And then John Cornyn from Texas, he brought it up and brought up this other instance where, I understand, Judge Jackson, you defended some Guantanamo detainees, some Guantanamo prisoners. Well, yeah, she was a public defender, essentially. She was providing a defense. Everyone deserves a defense. And the matter came up, did you call George Bush a war criminal? How can anyone call George Bush a war criminal? I mean, that's not actually that far-fetched. And it was, once again, another misleading attempt to smear, because she didn't. She did it in terms of the filing this habeas corpus filing on behalf of her clients. She was doing her job. On one case, Ted Cruz is trying to get her for asking a question about something, not taking a position on something. So, yeah, Ted Cruz is also big on critical race theory, trying to bring up this idea that, oh, well, you're for teaching critical race theory, aren't you? Because you have this role at the Georgetown private school. And she said, well, no, I don't take a stand on critical race theory. He said, well, at that school, look at all these books. These are critical race theory books. He said, well, I don't know what you're talking about. This is not relevant to my job as a judge. But she did say that the reason why she's on the board of the Georgetown Day School, which is a private school, which means that it's private. They can essentially do what they want. They don't take public monies. But the reason why it's a private school is because in 1945, the school was started by 3 Jewish families and 3 black families who came together because the public schools in D.C. were by law segregated. So I don't know how that works to help the Republicans say what a bad person Judge Ketanji Brown Jackson is. So they don't have anything, is what I'm saying. The Republicans. They have nothing to say that is negative. And one of the good things about this process and how judges go up the ladder and they go from one judgeship that requires confirmation to another. Ketanji Jackson has been through this. This is her 4th time. You would think the 4th time is a charm, right? I mean, so she is, you can understand how she's fairly equanimous here. Equanimous meaning, bring it on. It's like she's in this meditative mode. She'll take all comers. Come on. And she's cool, like a debater. She's cool, and one point, she had a pause. There was a long pause before she delivered an answer. But I don't think that was just, sometimes it's good. You pause because it shows you're thinking and shows you're thoughtful. But I was holding with that pause, wondering, is she going to let him have it now? No, she was cool. She was cool. But you put yourself in her shoes and you see how sadistic this process can be. I mean, I don't know. I've been watching these confirmation hearings since the Clarence Thomas, Anita Hill thing. I mean, in fact, I was in Washington working for a radio station there, and I did a talk show. That was like one of the most exciting talk show eras or situations I've ever been in. I just had to say, give us a call, give us your reaction. Phones were lit up. Everyone wanted to talk about Anita Hill, Clarence Thomas. But, so I've been watching a lot of these throughout the years. And they always seem like sadistic sessions. And the funny thing is the sadists, the senators asking the questions, generally the ones on the other side of, perceived to be on the other side of the aisle of where the judge is perceived to be, because they're impartial. But in this case, it's all the Republicans are are ganging up and taking swings at Ketanji Brown Jackson, and all the Democrats are really being thoughtful and giving her a chance to speak and giving her a chance to rebut what the Republican senators who are out to get her, would refuse to let her talk. Because most of the time, the Republican senators were, I guess the word is preening. They were preening. They should do their own version of Emil Guillermo's takeout. It's a lot easier. But they do their preening and try to make their points, score points to, I mean, Lindsey Graham, he's from South Carolina, and one of the judges who was up for this position was a black judge from South Carolina. So he's got to score points with his community, saying, look, I'm covering my person. You know, why is she, you know, criticized and heard? And meanwhile, you, Judge Jackson, your people on the left love you, but the people on the left, they've smeared, you know, Judge Childs, who's the South Carolina judge. So I just found the whole thing throughout the early afternoon just kind of sadistic. Thank goodness Ketanji Brown Jackson has this thick skin. I mean, really, you need to have that kind of thick skin and smile. I mean, that's the thing that gets me about all these politicians. They seem so nice. They seem so, but then they're not really. One more point about critical race theory. Because this came up. Ted Cruz tried to bring it up. Ibram Kendi's books were brought up. 1619 Project, that was brought up. And Ted Cruz said, isn't it true? Isn't it true that this is taught at these schools, this Georgetown Day School, that you serve on the Parents' Council? And it was Chris Coons who came up after Cruz, who kind of put it in perspective. He said, Judge, have you ever mentioned 1619 in any kind of ruling that you've ever done over, 10 years as a judge, 540 opinions, or over almost 600 opinions? Have you ever mentioned the 1619 Project? No. Have you ever mentioned critical race theory? No. So another irrelevancy bites the dust. So I promised I would play for you the one bit, and I've listened to a lot of this, but the one bit of the proceedings, or the one answer that is all you need to know. If you need to know one question, the exchange between the senators, that's all like show. Senators like Cruz and Lindsey Graham, that's show. I don't know who else is coming up this afternoon, but Hawley, Blackburn, those are to see what kind of things the right wing folks are trying to get at. And no doubt it'll be a combination of soft on porn, critical race theory, and that. I mean, if you want to see debate clash, yeah, you can watch it. But if you want to find out what makes Judge Jackson, what makes her decisions, or how does she come to her decisions, just go to the very first section when she's asked by Chairman Dick Durbin about how she is a judge. She's fresh. It's the first thing out of the box that I saw. And she answers it in a way that if you hear it and you understand what she's saying, you come away saying, like you do after going through all her qualifications, you say, she's the right one. You say she's the one. Here's Judge Ketanji Jackson talking about her methodology.
Over the course of my almost decade on the bench, I have developed a methodology that I use in order to ensure that I am ruling impartially and that I am adhering to the limits on my judicial authority.
I mean, really, what else do you need, right? This is the question. Here is her answer, right? This is the main question. You don't want to know about all this other stuff that are hypotheticals, that are really irrelevancies. How does she approach a case?
I am acutely aware that as a judge in our system, I have limited power, and I am trying in every case to stay in my lane. And so what I do is I essentially follow 3 steps. The first step is when I get a case, I ensure that I am proceeding from a position of neutrality. This means that, you get a case and it's about something and it's submitted by certain parties. I am clearing my mind of any preconceived notions about how the case might come out, setting aside any personal views. It's very important that judges rule without fear or favor.
So she's outlining 3 things that she does. The first one is she assures her neutrality, right? Which is, you would hope, right? A judge is neutral. Her mind is clear. Any preconceived notions, if a judge does that intentionally, that's got to be a good thing, right? This is part 1 of her 3-step methodology. Here is part 2.
The second step is once I've cleared the decks, so to speak, in this way, I am able to receive all of the appropriate inputs for the case. That is the parties' arguments. They've written briefs. Sometimes we have a hearing. Sometimes we hear from other parties, amici in a case. And then there's the factual record. I am evaluating all of the facts from various perspectives. I think my experience, all of the various experiences that I've had, really helps me at this stage to see the perspectives of all of the parties and to understand their arguments.
So that's got to speak well, the fact that she's done all this from the standpoint of she's been a public defender, she's been a criminal defense attorney, she's been, she's been a judge, she's worked corporate. She can see different perspectives. She has a sense of empathy. All right, so this is part 2, getting all the inputs, getting all the facts, right? 1, she clears the decks. 2, she gets all the inputs, right? Now, here is the 3rd step.
Third step is the interpretation and application of the law to the facts in the case. And this is where I'm really observing the constraints on my judicial authority. There are many constraints in our system, importantly, because judges have limited authority. And so I am, first of all, looking at my jurisdiction. Threshold matter in every federal case is to make sure that you even have the power to hear the case. In evaluating jurisdiction, you're looking at all sorts of things. The text of a jurisdictional provision, for example, precedent related to it. If I can get to the merits of the case, if I have jurisdiction, then I am observing the limits on my authority concerning the question. So if it is a statute, for example, or a provision of the Constitution, I'm looking at the text. The adherence to text is a constraint on my authority. I'm trying to figure out what those words mean as they were intended by the people who wrote them.
All right, so what that say? That says she's not influenced by the left or the right. She's looking at the Constitution. She's wondering, do I have jurisdiction? And once she clears her mind, gets the inputs, gets, establishes she has jurisdiction. Now she looks at the Constitution. That's her 3-step process. And it's not about what's in the news. It's not about what people are saying. It's not about what the politicians are want her to do. She is an independent, impartial judge. She says it first question out of the box. Instead of 9 hours of hearings or 12 hours of hearings, you ask, answered, let's go home. I mean, but the senators need to preen. The senators need to send messages out to their constituents who give them money, give them votes, but give them money. There was a good lecture on dark money, where money comes from who knows where. And the dark money folks, like the report was 400 million, maybe 500 million or more in dark money flooding into judicial campaigns. Sheldon Whitehouse, in his section of the proceedings today, brought it out. He had his big placards, Sheldon Whitehouse. And I think that's important, because all the Trump folks got millions of dollars, dark money, from right-wing causes. Yeah, but dark money means you can't necessarily trace it. I'm just saying, the impartiality of a judge, her statement, upfront statement, her intention, that's important. And here she is, Ketanji Brown Jackson, saying it. And then she caps off her methodology after clearing the decks, inputs, deciding jurisdiction. Then she says she looks at the Constitution, and she's looking at the words, what the words mean, adherence to the text.
So at this point, I'm looking at original documents. I am focusing on the original public meaning because I'm constrained to interpret the text. Sometimes that's enough to resolve the issue in terms of the merits. Judges also look at history and practice at the time of the document was created. If it's a statute, I'm looking at Congress's purposes, because again, I am not importing my personal views or policy preferences. The entire exercise is about trying to understand what those who created this policy or this law intended.
She's not bringing her own biases in. She says it again. She's looking at, if I'm looking at a law, who created this law? What were the policies? What did the creators of this law or policy, what did they intend? Not what do I, Ketanji Brown Jackson, want to see. Important.
I'm also looking at precedent, which is another constraint on judicial authority. I am looking at prior cases and trying to understand what other judges have said. As a lower court judge, I'm bound by the precedent. And even in the Supreme Court, if I was fortunate enough to be confirmed, there's stare decisis, which is a binding kind of principle that the justices look at when they're considering precedents.
Now,
so
think of that.
All of stare decisis.
Stare decisis. Now, that comes up a lot in these hearings. And if you listen to them, you'll say, there's stare decisis again. Klobuchar asked her about stare decisis. And if you Google it like I did, stare decisis just means, hey, there's precedent. And precedent has standing. Precedent. What came before? What was decided before? Stare decisis. I like that. I just kept thinking of Van Gogh's Starry Night. I guess that's not really legal, but I kept thinking of that. Stare decisis. Anyway, that is, Judge, that's all you need. If you say, Emil, thanks for this. I'm giving you the shortcut. You want to see the fights, you want to see the, Ted Cruz, Josh Hawley trying to act like they're Tucker Carlson. You want to, go to the talk show realm of the Senate proceedings. Oh, watch me preen, watch me reach out to my constituents, watch me reach out to my donors. Yeah, then go to C-SPAN and use I guess you could use your finger. I forget what the user interface on C-SPAN is, but check out what they're saying. And you don't have commercials like you do if you watch, CNN or MSNBC or any of those. C-SPAN. That's what I did. And I'm telling you, that first segment with Durbin, she spells it out. That's what you need to know. That's how she's going to do things. And don't you know, the senators all want their chance. They want that limelight. They want to stick it to the judge. Child pornography. No, she's not. No, she's not soft on crime, soft on porn. She's none of those things. They're just going for the gotcha moments. And, I was wondering, why do I want to watch this? Why is it important for me to watch this? Well, it's important for me, Emil Guillermo, to watch this because I want to feel like I am part of this democracy. I want to feel like, now, when I am when I was a reporter, full-time for a news organization, yeah, I was out there representing you. I was part of the representative government. When I was covering City Hall or the county or whatever, the White House, I covered the White House for a while. I covered Congress. When I did that, it was to be a representative of the people. And so now that I'm writing my columns, it's essentially the same thing. My columns I put up on the Aldef blog where I talk about Asian Americans. I'm just doing what I've done in, more than 25 years as a journalist, more than 30 years, more than 35 years. I'm just observing and also offering my opinion, but also making sure it's my opinion. By the way, Amy Klobuchar, whose father was a newspaperman, asked Ketanji Jackson about the press and the importance of journalism. Journalism is important. It's not like being a Supreme Court justice. No, she didn't say that. But she did acknowledge the importance of journalism and the First Amendment. And really, it's the reason why I do this, because I feel like this is how you stay engaged with your government. It's why you watch C-SPAN. It's why, things go on 3,000 miles away. Are we even related to all those folks in Washington? Well, yeah, we are. And we can engage and we follow. We know what's going on. Let me show one more thing. And this is important because it just points out the ridiculousness of all this that's going on here. These questions, and we got another day of questions on Wednesday. This is in the Washington Post. How Ketanji Brown Jackson's path to the Supreme Court differs from current justices. It doesn't just differ, but it shows you that the judge may be overqualified. I mean, look at what she's done. She went to a public high school, which that's great. How many went to a public high school? Breyer did, Alito, Kagan. Only 4 out of the 9. The rest were private school folks. Here's one. Ivy League law school. All of them except Coney Barrett. All of them went to an Ivy League law school. Is that good? Some people think that that's a bad thing, that they're all cut from the same cloth. They all see the law in the same way. but it also means that you got bright minds. Career-wise, Supreme Court clerking. Out of the 9, 7 of them have been Supreme Court clerks. Thomas wasn't. Alito wasn't. Sotomayor wasn't. Public defender, Jackson, the only public defender. The only one. Sentencing Commission, Jackson and Breyer. None of the others. That's where the empathy comes in. District Judge, Sotomayor and Jackson. That's really the nuts and bolts of being a judge. Hearing the facts, taking it in, the input. Court of Appeals judge. Well, all of them were Court of Appeals judges except Kagan. And so you look at all the squares and you look to see who checks off what. It's almost ridiculous that they're even going through the questioning a fourth time, considering she's been, like I said, questioned 3 times before. Has anything changed? Nothing has changed. She was passed by Republicans. And one thing that comes out, especially after Coons' questioning, you realize that Ketanji Brown Jackson, she really is pretty even-handed. She gave a win to the Republican National Committee over Hillary Clinton. That's something. She gave a win to Donald Trump to build the wall. Can't paint her with a broad brush like, oh, she's some kind of leftist something or other, leftist activist. No, she's not. I think what we'll find is we'll find the kind of jurist that we've always wanted. One who can look at the facts and get close to the truth. Unlike, I'm telling you, the last 3 Trump judges, Kavanaugh, Gorsuch, Coney Barrett, I have no trust that they would go against strict conservative perspectives. No trust that at some point with a rule for someone who is liberal, if they were right, doesn't mean that a conservative has to be wrong. It just means is their animus toward liberal ideas, progressive thinking, so warped that they couldn't conceive of perhaps siding with, the other side. I think you think of Gorsuch, you think of Kavanaugh, I think of Coney Barrett, and you say, they're just dyed-in-the-wool ideologues. And they were able to sneak in. They're also far less qualified, as I just showed you on that chart, than Ketanji Brown Jackson. But guess what? Ketanji Brown Jackson gets put through the ringer because, as Tucker Carlson says, let's see your LSAT scores. Did you get in there because of race? What Tucker Carlson said was disgusting. In fact, Ted Cruz tried to go down that route and said, what do you think about that Martin Luther King speech about, man should be judged by his character, not by the color of his skin? Do you agree with that? Kind of a softball. Judge Jackson said, yeah, I agree with that. Everyone should. But we shouldn't, now this is me talking, we shouldn't misuse it and twist it rhetorically to do something that's quite the opposite, which is what right-wing ideologues do with that speech. Anyway, I'm going to go back for more hearings, I think. I think part of me says, "Oh, Emil, come on. It's fun to watch these things, but you know, after you play that one answer from that one answer from the Durban, the Durban part of the hearings, is it really? I mean, you know how she's going to rule. She's got a methodology. That methodology is important. Means that she's not making it up. Not making it up as I go along. No. She's got a methodology. Judge Ketanji. I'm telling you, 30 years from now, she'll be known as KBJ, and she'll be on, well, who knows? 30 years from now, will they have TikTok? She'll be on TikTok before long. She is going to be revered in the same way that Thurgood Marshall was revered. And she one more day tomorrow. There's a day tomorrow, and then there's something on Thursday, and then they're hoping for full confirmation before their Easter recess, and the Easter recess is April 11th. So maybe it all wraps up soon. I hope. All right, I don't have my swish ready because I know if I press my swish, it'll come out with a wah wah sound, and that's not what I want. Hey, look, thank you for joining me here. My name is Emil Guillermo. This is what I like to call what do I like to call this? I call this the micro talk show of the AAPI and the AAXs. You know who you are. Or the ALLs, all's the rest of you. You don't have to be an AAPI or an AAX. It's just that, we give it a perspective of the AAPI. It's important. I mean, somehow, we always have to see these stories and say, well, how does it apply to us? How does it? And here you got a guy like me just telling you, hey, this is from an Asian American perspective. So like us on Twitter at Emil Amok, or follow. You can follow us on Twitter at Emil Amok. See more of these on amok.com. Read more at ALDEF, the ALDEF blog, aaldef.org/blog. The PETA podcast comes out tomorrow. It's a good one. We talked to someone in PETA, Germany. They're trying to save animals. You won't believe how many animals they've saved. A lot. Email me. You can always email me at Emil, EMIL, at amok.com. That's EMIL, AMOK. EMIL at amok.com. Like us, friend us, follow us on Facebook at emilguillermo.media. Also, go to YouTube. Give us whatever they're asking for there. Thumbs, fingers, like us there. Emil Guillermo YouTube. And now, regular listeners of the show know at this juncture, this is how we end every show with our loving kindness meditation. Because, sometimes, could you have withstood all that BS from all the senders? That kind of nastiness? I was a high school debater, and I felt that. I felt some of the stuff that you have to kind of stifle. You grow by experiencing how that feels when you're a kid. I must not have liked it because I did not want to go on and become a lawyer. I mean, a lot of the great debaters in my high school who were every bit the champion as Ketanji Jackson. They went on, they had the same kind of gigs. And they didn't make it to the Supreme Court, but they were, mofo folks, top private firms. But I was not interested in that. It's because I saw what this sort of thing does to you. I wasn't interested. So, I mean, if you watch the hearings, if you go back and watch the hearings, just imagine, I mean, how would it make you feel? I mean, would you feel bad? Would you feel... That's why we do these loving kindness things. Because if you feel like, oh, I don't belong, I'm not worth it, you belong. You're worth it. Here, take this hand here, put it here, put this hand here, put it here. Give it a squeeze. That's all it takes. Feeling shame, feeling a lack of self-worth, feeling not good enough. All it takes is a little squeeze. And then go forward. Go ahead, walk through that door. Walk through that door of self-love. Love yourself. Be kind to yourself. Be good to yourself. And as I wish for me, I wish for you. May you be safe. May you be healthy. May you be happy. And may you live with ease. Till tomorrow. Emil Guillermo here. Mahal Katan.